Really Big Show with Jim Check and Ian Burns.
I'm Jim Check, and that good-looking young man over there is Ian Burns, and we're here with the Really Big Show. It is Monday, July 27th, and it is kind of like the smoke is kind of lifting here. I don't know, how's it looking out there in the nation's capital?
It's all right. Sunny, very humid as well.
Our headline this morning, Canada's chickens coming home to roost after 11 years of failure. And there's a lot of chickens. We kind of debated the headline there too, because we were going to talk about government failure to deliver as loony sets up her fall, and that's what we're going to lead with. But it's like almost they're out there duck hunting, trying to shoot that loony, and doesn't look good for the loony. But first, before we kick things off, we do want to talk about some of the feedback we always get. This one said that they want to see more all across Canada. Somebody says that we want to see more on just, Eastern Canada too, the East Coast of Canada. I definitely need to, like we're trying to cover this on a national focus. We do kind of lean towards a little bit of British Columbia and Ontario and Alberta. So we should try to get a more diverse look, I guess. He can help by helping us get leads on some of these stories, because it's pretty quiet out of there too, right? Like they don't talk a lot. And then somebody obviously really loves us. Why don't you guys move to the US? They'd love you there, and we in Canada would be happy too. It's amazing how these people speak for all of Canada. Isn't that crazy? Just like that, eh? Put the Canadian maple leaf there in your icon, and then you speak for Canada. So no.
Call yourself a silent majority as well.
That's right.
Seal the deal.
And no tolerating anybody that dares speak out or is critical of power. Because media's job used to be being the critics of power. I know that's been distorted for some people, as they are more of the town criers for power. I'm going to show you some of that later. We have so much going on this week, though, too. We got lots of good stuff. Today, John Carpe, Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, join us at 10:30. Going to talk about, I think he's got a 9-point plan there to get some of your freedoms back. See if that works. And big guests coming in tomorrow. The food professors are going to join us tomorrow. The food professor is going to talk about how the media has decided that he's on the outs. They don't want to talk to him anymore because he's bringing truth. Isn't that weird? If you bring truth, they're just like, nobody talks to that guy. Some like us, we have the plague sometimes. And then on Wednesday, what's happening on Wednesday? We got Gary Clement. He was actually in Sam Cooper's book as well. And so Gary Clement, former RCMP, high up there. We're going to talk about foreign interference here in Canada. Thursday, the big one. We're not going to do that one live. We have the Ambassador Hoekstra going to join us. We're going to do that one, and we'll get that out to you as soon as we can. We got lots of questions to ask the ambassador. And then on Friday, popular Jasmine Lane is going to join us too. She's being attacked by the media as well. The media. They're all attacking her. It's just like you have to toe the line. Otherwise, you are a treasonous, like this guy says, why don't you guys move to the United States? What? And then someone also says that we're two wannabe journalists. These guys, again, two wannabe journalists. And he comments quite a bit, actually, so I'm not sure why he keeps coming back. I guess he likes pain. And I just asked him, should we obey power and just parrot the government press releases? We used to do that, right? That didn't work either, though.
And it's funny. I'm sure he wouldn't have been leaving comments when we were doing that. Wouldn't have been interested. But now he is.
Welcome, Chris. Thank you for your patronage. Hope you come back every day. Maybe
we still
miss
will get through you, Lightning Rod. If you're out there, Lightning Rod, we remember.
This is the breaking story. We don't have much on. I just thought we'd put it in there. But another shots because of the ambassadors coming to see us on Thursday. More shots fired near the U.S. consulate in Toronto. Did you hear anything else on this yet, Ian?
No, I think the superintendent or whatever is speaking right about now. The U.S. Embassy says at least one gunshot hit the building. The last time was March the 10th. Because obviously this is not the first time the U.S. consulate has been shot. Yeah, it looks like there's nothing to sort of take this story anywhere else, but Very, very strange.
Hey, big shout out to the Global Traveler. He's in Mexico right now, in Costa Maya. And he's contributed to independent media. We thank the Global Traveler. Great guy. We had him on twice now. We had him once just on members only, and we had him on once on the show. It's tons of information. We'll have to have him back on as well. We have to do a members show at some point here too. We're going to try and fit that into this busy schedule this week as we ramp up more and more interviews for you. And we do have an economist joining us the following Monday, so we're booking out, so that's great. But the one that we wanted to talk about this morning, this one here it's starting to look very ominous, and it's the one we've talked about a few times. The Canadian dollar looks like it wants to go down. The hedge funds accumulated the most negative bets on the Canadian dollar in 2 years. The tariffs drag on the currency. The Canadian dollar very, very weak. It's very weak, and again, we've talked about this a few times. We've highlighted this. I think going back, we've been talking about this for a while as the Canadian dollar continues to slip. And we said during the election, if there was a pro-energy guy comes in, the Canadian dollar goes to 85 cents. If we have continuation of the same, we can look for 65 cents or the low 60s. And it's starting to look like that because we don't have a pro-energy guy. We have a guy that says he's pro-energy, kind of, right? Like, do we know? Do we know where he stands? Do we know where Mark Carney and the Liberals stand on energy?
He's made it abundantly clear where he stands on carbon capture, carbon credits, and that kind of thing. Just see the most recent release from the PMO. You can do it yourself. Go on the Prime Minister's office website and read all that malarkey about carbon capture. As for oil, gas, that kind of thing, things that make money and build power, not entirely sure. A bit ambiguous on that one.
You can put up the next chart there, Nick, and just showing you how this hedge fund, this bearish bets on the Canadian dollar. And no trade deal. We're going to show you lots of evidence of people leaving, giving up on Canada, corporations giving up on Canada. Canada has become basically a playground for oligopolies where they make more and more money, and the rest of the corporation is not protected, and these oligopolies are just like, okay, we've had enough of this. I watched so much on carbon capture and all that. There's so many people pushing back on, including, like we shared with you on Friday, the environmentalists. They say it's a waste of time, cost way too much, and it's just a boondoggle. So the only person that the oil field companies don't want it. They surely don't want it if they have to pay for it. They don't care if you pay for it. Nobody seems to want it. We highlighted that. We did a really good clip on it as well. The only person that seems to want carbon capture is Mark Carney himself. And you have to ask yourself why. Why is it standing in the way? Why is it standing in the way of prosperity for Canada?
Yeah. Our friend Global Traveller here asks about the pound, the Great British Pound, and whether that happened under Carney's rule, the same thing that's happening to the dollar. I think that's more Liz Truss, that sort of pensions, the pensions scare and the bond market revolt. That's when the pound freaked out. But I've just had a look at the pound now, and it's seen better days, but it's pretty healthy. $1.33 to the pound. That's pretty much where they like it, I think.
Yeah,
so
spot.
That just highlights the extent to which this is a Canadian thing. You know, even though that Britain is just like an absolute basket case of a country, fiscally, in every way. They've just elected Ricky Gervais's character from The Office to be their prime minister. Well, they didn't elect him. They sort of bungled him in from the corridors, and yet still, you know, they're somehow doing a little bit better than Canada, at least when it comes to currency.
And I want to remind people what this means. If the currency falls into the 60s, in the low 60s, like that 70-cent mark is a psychological barrier too. If it falls below that, you could probably see it fall faster because it breaks that psychological barrier. Because it came down lower and then bopped up a little bit, but if it falls, the people that are going to feel the pain is the Canadian. The average Canadian will feel immense pain because that immense pain will come in higher grocery prices, higher auto prices, higher electronics prices, basically higher prices for almost everything. Who wins? There's winners, for sure. There's winners. Winners are the corporations that sell to the United States, get American dollars, and pay you in cheaper Canadian dollars. So companies like Brookfield will do extremely well. People with lots of wealth will do extremely well because most of that wealth, like if you take Mark Carney, for example, most of his wealth is in the United States. So that spread, that gap will widen for Mark Carney, and it'll be a big day for him. So the people that are set up well will do extremely well if the Canadian dollar falls. That's why you see in countries where, like the currencies collapse, the very wealthy do extremely well in those countries. You'll see this disparity continue to grow. And countries like Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro not hurting, and now he's hurting, now that he's sitting in a small box. But I mean, those countries where the currency falls apart, they've divested themselves or diversified. It's the average Canadian, though, that has nowhere to go because you get paid in Canadian dollars. All your purchases are in Canadian dollars. It'll be extremely painful for the Canadians. And Mark Carney's investment conference comes up in September. It'll be like a 50% off sale for all these corporations or countries that are coming in to take a look at what's on sale for Canada. Just think of buying an airport in Canada on a 50% off sale because you buy it in Canadian currencies. I mean, if I was a union negotiator right now for some of these big ones, I would probably say I want to get paid in US dollars. Because like right now, what protection do you have in rising inflation? Mark Carney gets paid in US dollars. Most of Brookfield stuff's in US dollars. I mean, again, these people that are running this country, the policies that are hurting the Canadian public don't seem to affect the Laurentian elite. If anything, they may be benefiting from it. Weird, no? And here it is, the big one here, Canadians' biggest source of wealth, losing ground. Just spit on myself. Let's look at this. Canadians' biggest source of wealth, losing ground. Can you guess what that is? As you look down the black hole? That'd be real estate. Real estate in Canada. Most of Canadian wealth is tied up in real estate. This is where all the, like the boomers that, we had Ian Connerty on Friday and did that interview, and talked about, Carney's strength coming from that crowd. And, they seem to, we had Tristan Hopper on too, and he says that group seemed to be, almost immune to some of the effects of the economy because they don't see it. They don't see it. They don't experience it. They don't have a mortgage. But if their wealth drops, like in their housing, all of a sudden they may start to feel the pain that many other Canadians are feeling right now. It is like the biggest, that is where most of the wealth is, right? That's where most of the wealth is tied up in Canada, is in real estate. And then we warned about that a long time ago and saying, look at like Canada's housing bubble, like way higher than most other nations. If you look at that chart compared to other nations, and again, that was driven by liberal immigration policies. Too many people, not enough supply. Too many people, not enough supply. And drove those prices through the roof. And then, cheap money when the Bank of Canada rate was at 0.25. And lots of speculation, lots of money laundering. If you read Sam Cooper's book too, lots of money flowing into the markets in Vancouver. And the government turning a blind eye to all that as well.
Willfully.
Willful blindness.
Well,
willful blindness. And yet, the thing that could kind of like cure our economy, like the biggest cure for the economy, is just I use the word exploitation of our resources not happening. And that goes for mining, that goes for oil and gas, and it's a slow plundering. Lots of office announcements, like major projects office. What has got done? What are we, 18 months into Carney's leadership now? 18 months? And what do we got? We got a bunch of new offices, I mean, there's quite a few people that are making really well. You know what I mean? Like if you got you're lucky enough to get one of those office jobs, heading up the major projects office or the new Build Canada Strong, the new housing corporation. I can't remember all the offices they fired up. Like Spaceport, they're doing well. All of these things. But are they producing anything? The housing office is not producing anything. Major projects office is not producing anything. Spaceport, well, I guess if you count a cement pad, I guess that's producing something. Maybe that concrete company got something out of it. And
you could
carbon
argue
capture,
it's
the
producing
industry.
a lot of loyalty to the Liberal Party, which is what matters after all.
And so the last couple of days has been quiet there in Iran as they stopped chucking missiles at each other. And the price of oil, dramatic drop. Right now we're seeing West Texas Intermediate around $83. $83 for West Texas Intermediate and Western Canadian Select at 74. So that price should reflect at the pump sooner or later. Will it hold? That's another question, right? Because we've been into the 80s already just recently, right? We were down into the low 80s, but that was a quick drop, right? Because it went down to the low 80s, I think even touched in the 70s. And then all of a sudden, like they started hostilities again, went back to the low 90s, and then it's fallen back here. I mean, a lot of Canada's surplus right now, not surplus, but its gains in GDP was because of high oil prices. So that'll evaporate as well as the price of oil starts to settle.
Well, there's surplus with the United States as well, kind of dependent on that.
And then Trump there slaps 60 economies, including Canada, with new tariffs, and that's over that forced labor. We talked about that a little bit last week as well. So this is a new 10% tariff for many nations. I think Canada fits into the 10, and some are getting 12.5%. As Chinese EVs start to roll into Canada. Was that name of that one company? Dongfeng. Actually, Dongfeng is actually owned by the Chinese Communist Party. And they've got a website set up, and you too can open up a dealership in Canada. You can just sign up. Polestar, which was a Chinese company Chinese owned, which is part Volvo in the United States, is shutting down its dealership. So Polestar, basically, because they're not allowing Chinese EVs into the United States. So Polestar closing dealerships in the United States. And the people that bought a Polestar, probably not sure how they're going to get that thing serviced. And here's the puzzle for today. A couple puzzles. Canada again steps up for Ukraine. Another $650 million. Where does Canada have the money to continue to give? And why is Canada stepping in front to be the biggest contributor per capita of all this?
Well, it's also like with Danielle Smith she's our newest geopolitical analyst, isn't she? But Peppa Pig as well is another big one for us. But any geopolitical analyst, really, I'd like them to look at this and explain to us how this is Canada's number one priority, foreign policy priority. More so even, if it is still true that it's per capita number one, that would mean more than the Germans, the Poles, the Baltic countries. I mean, I must admit, I haven't actually checked the per capita rankings lately, but I know at one point that was said of Canada, wasn't it?
Well, Carney just said it.
I mean,
he just
very
bragged
intrigued
about it
by
just
that.
recently.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued by how somebody serious like Peppa Pig, how you could actually construct the geopolitical argument. Not talking about the moral argument, that's easy. Russia hardly doesn't recommend itself to many people, does it? Certainly not in the world of morality. That argument's easy to make. But I'm interested in the geopolitical argument. I mean, if it was something to do with the Arctic, perhaps, I would understand that. But nonetheless, it's a bit tricky. I mean, you would think it was more important to a country like Poland, wouldn't you?
You would think. But also, if you look at Canada's circumstances, as the chickens come home to roost, and the currency about, near collapsing. I mean, it's going to be so bloody painful. I need to warn people right now. It's going to be so bloody painful. If this currency goes down into the low 60s, it'll be pain. It'll be absolute pain. And of course, they'll blame Trump, right? They'll blame Trump for the currency. They won't blame the failed policies. 11 years of policy failure. Look at the dollar chart. This didn't happen because of Trump. This is 11 years of government failure. 11 years of policy failure. In a nation so rich, that's when you compare it to what we have. It's the underperforming, the squandered opportunities in Canada, the squandered opportunities. And thank you to Diana for the contribution as well. We appreciate you, as always. 10 million Canadians suffer food insecurity. That's 25% of the population. 25% of the population suffers food insecurity. That means children are going hungry in Canada. And we have more money to give away. More money to give away as our currency looks rough. 50% of Canadians are at a financial breaking point. If that currency drops, that number is going to go over. The majority of Canadians will be at a financial breaking point. The rich will do extremely well. The rich will do extremely well. Don't get me wrong there. So if you're living off the government, you got a big fat salary, or you're selling into the United States, bully for you. But where's the sympathy and the empathy for all those left behind, as Ian called them, I think, last week, the left behind? These liberal, and this is worldwide, this liberal left-leaning policies seem to forget about the left behind, because they just want to bring out, like it seems fine. Like you talked about, we're going to talk about in a minute, Chrystia Freeland, where she lives and where that Economist reporter lives, in those areas. It's great, you know what I mean? I don't see any problems, right? As they sit there looking at their ivory towers, I don't see any issues. And then you think that's bad enough. Anita Anand is like Santa Claus. They should give her a Santa suit. Canada is the middle power. We talked about this how many times? Canada, the middle power. It isn't a middle power. But Pakistan actually is a middle power. Canada backs Pakistan's Iran diplomacy, announces $47 million in aid. What? What?
Hell yeah.
This deserves a moment of silence. How does Canada have any more money to dole out? I mean, it's almost like they want to collapse the currency. Just like, how much debt can we ring up? Just like ring in the cash register. Just, oh yeah, where's this money going? We'll never know where it goes, right? Where does it go? And our friend Julian Assange, we should try to get him on one day. Canada doesn't need nuclear weapons. We were paying for the upkeep of dozens of nuclear-armed missiles in Pakistan. If we put that next tweet up there. What the literal heck are we doing? Anita Anand, if you track all the money she's given away since she's been foreign ambassador or whatever, foreign cabinet minister, what is she doing? How can we justify more and more money to foreign nations when there's not enough at home?
I would also say, though, Pakistan's a very important country. And we'll go back to Peppa Pig, if you're thinking about geopolitics and you're interested in projecting power in South Asia, Central Asia, the Middle East, Pakistan is your boy. Hence, after 9/11, and before 9/11, Kissinger and all the rest of it during the Cold War, the Americans poured money into Pakistan because it's so important. It's so obvious. Again, consult a map. Look at that beautiful position and the shape of the country, how it goes right up into Central Asia, but it's also on the Indian Ocean now, the Arabian Sea, access to the Persian Gulf. There you go. There's your map. It has magnificent geography in that sense. Very, very useful. But we're talking about countries like China. Obviously, China has basically colonized and vassalized Pakistan for that very reason. Shares a border with Pakistan as well. So China's in there. The United States has been in there at various points, still is to an extent. China and the United States both being sort of superpowers, or great powers at least, who are in conflict around the world and trying to kind of assert themselves everywhere. Canada, on the other hand, what is the geopolitical strategy here? Peppa Pig's looked at it. Peppa Pig can't decide. I'm wondering myself, what is this for? Are we gonna start some kind of informal 21st century style empire like the Americans have? Are we gonna do that? Starting with Pakistan? I just, whatever. You go, Anita. You do it. You do your thing, Anita. I'm sure you know what's going on.
Well, apparently it's to back Iran's diplomacy. So they needed $47 million just from Canada so that they could be the go-between there, just from Canada. They're just like, hey, we're going to need some money for this diplomacy. Call the suckers up. Oh, yeah, right, Canada. They just give out money like crazy. What is Canada doing? And how can it justify that when 10 million Canadians face food insecurity? How can they do that?
But again, it's like, if you're going to do geopolitics, if you're going to have a foreign policy, at least make it make sense. Make it useful for us. What is this doing for us exactly, But again, it's just like the geopolitical illiteracy displayed by Canada's elite. Anita Anand at the very top of that pyramid.
Yeah, her husband runs that bridge to PEI, and they won't disclose that information either, because apparently that information belongs just to the Liberal Party of Canada. It's weird, isn't it? Maybe we can get Bloomberg to disclose that information on the other bridge, since how they're the bridge breakers, the bridge newsbreakers. Bloomberg, can you get the details for the PEI bridge? Because you got the stuff for the Gordie Howe bridge. Canada doesn't seem to want to release the information until they're shamed into releasing it. And I shouldn't say Canada. And all the 11 years of policy failure, all at the altar of climate change, climate narrative. And then there's a guy running the show right now that has built his whole financial wealth on climate policy, basically, right? Financialization of climate. Brookfield, all that stuff, financialization. He built his whole, I think you said it last week. He said, hey, let's get ahead of it. Let's get ahead of the zeitgeist there, and let's build our whole empire around climate policy. And everybody else is out now, or leaving, and Canada's not only all in, just like, we're going to lead the world in it. Listen to this clip here on some of this policy failure. Listen to this.
I realized that a new force had emerged, arresting our abundance and flatlining our ability to produce energy. The net zero movement, while this may not have been intended, created a world where energy had become the enemy and scarcity was celebrated. Energy infrastructure that was once built with no issues suddenly was getting blocked, canceled, and opposed. Energy facilities that produced power was now getting shut down and retired at an accelerated rate. But maybe this was all according to plan. After all, we were promised cheaper electricity and lower emissions. How have we done on that front? Energy bills are increasing, not working. This is what energy scarcity looks like in the developed world. What about emissions? Despite trillions of investments in clean energy.
Can you freeze on that one chart and then just stop the video, go back one? Right there. And look at that, Ian. There's one nation there that's driving down its energy costs. And the rest that in the last little while there through those policies have been driving up energy costs. And if the energy costs go up, it stifles the economy because people stop expanding.
Yeah, I mean, as things stand, it's the quickest and easiest way to be defeated by China in the global strategic conflict that's underway between the West and China. The very easiest solution, if you're literally working for the Chinese Communist Party, you're a sort of double agent. You're a deeply embedded asset of the Chinese Communist Party, and you're at the highest levels of a Western country, like, for example, Germany. The very, very best thing, the golden crown, would be to do something like, I don't know, blow up nuclear power plants so that they can't be used ever again, and then waste your time at northerly latitudes trying to power an industrial economy with solar panels. That's probably what I would do if I was given that mission. If my mission in life was sabotage the West so that China can win the strategic conflict between the West and China, that's what I would do. I would destroy Germany's industrial base. I would go to places like Canada and I would put every possible obstacle in front of new energy developments. I would go to places like the UK and put in a Marxist psychopath like Ed Miliband and just let him go free. Let him do what he wants. Don't drill in the North Sea. Just build windmills everywhere. That's literally what I would do. I mean, I can't think of a better plan if you wanted to lose this conflict to China, while China knocks out coal-fired power stations, natural gas, oil, solar panels, wind, anything at all, nuclear power, dams. They'll just do anything so that they can get cheaper energy.
So you play the rest of that. Keep going on it.
Developed world. What about emissions? Despite trillions of investments in clean energy, despite billions in blocking energy infrastructure, emissions in this world are still going up. Despite the leadership we see in US and the EU in lowering emissions. This is not working. But we need to stop fighting about this. We need to find common ground and move forward together. That is the attitude of abundance. And now China, once considered resource poor, is producing more natural gas than resource-rich Canada, which has been a poster child for the attitude of energy scarcity. Abundance is possible, it's also necessary. The world is certainly going to be dealing with a lot of issues in the past, and what you guys are all discussing today are all the risks that we see in the future. One thing that's clear is that this world needs more human intelligence helping to solve the world's hardest problems to move civilization.
Energy is the key. We say it on this show a zillion times. We'll say it a zillion and one. Energy is the most important thing. Cheap, reliable energy is prosperity and security. Canada has had policies of scarcity and anti-energy policies. So anti-prosperity policies. Read it that way. Canada has had 11 years of anti-prosperity policies driven by climate grift that benefits the few. Look at how some people have enriched themselves. And these people that stood at the podium and told you to go without, they don't follow those policies. Right now, Justin Trudeau is one of the poster boys. He's all over the world, flying around, drinking out of plastic cups, doing everything while he shamed you. They don't believe in these policies. Bill Gates has walked away from it. Even Greta's got other things that she's doing fundraising for right now. And yet Mark Carney in Canada are still down the same path because it is how his wealth is derived. It's the financialization of climate religion. And the only nation really all in on it right now is Canada. We're going to lead. Mark Carney says we're going to lead the world in carbon capture because people want to buy decarbonized oil. Yet he still hasn't been able to show us any nation that's demanding decarbonized oil. Have you seen any yet? Have you run across any? Like, maybe we should do the David Cochrane pen thing and just, like flip it around. So Ian, how many, I don't even can do this.
He wouldn't do that if he was interviewing a Liberal minister. He'd say, now we know lots of people want carbon-free oil, but I just want to focus on this one. No, it's strange, isn't it? It's so extraordinarily strange. Another way to look at it is, as well, it's just naivety, you could say. It's almost like it's like unilateral disarmament. During the Second World War, the left in England was very pacifist until the Soviet Union was invaded by the Nazis, believe it or not, coincidentally. But the left was hugely pacifist, and they would say things like, you know, we should just disarm, like keep our heads down. Gandhi is another example. Gandhi sent a infamous letter to, I can't remember who it was, Churchill or Chamberlain or somebody like that, saying, just lay down your arms, you know, like just embrace pacifism in the face of the Nazis. I mean, come on. But that kind of naive impulse doesn't seem to have gone away. You know, it was present there in the 60s. There were certain voices during the Cold War, during the War on Terror. You know, these Islamic fascist psychopaths flew planes into buildings, skyscrapers in New York City. And right away, that instinct was like, let's just unilaterally disarm. Like, we're to blame. Like, let's do this. Like, let's stop doing this. It's our fault. And that same impulse is still here. And in this context, it's just stop producing energy, stop having any kind of industry, and never mention the fact that China's not listening, nor is India or any other sort of big important country. It's I suppose it's kind of like masochism, isn't it? It's a masochistic impulse that people have. But I'll take this opportunity once again to recommend Energy and Civilization by Václav Smil. Because you mentioned Bill Gates, that made me think of him. Bill Gates is a massive fanboy of Václav Smil's. And on the front of all of Václav Smil's books, there's a quote from Bill Gates saying, like, Václav Smil's, it's the book I always, whenever he's got a new book out, like, that's what I look forward to the most. But he's not quite like Bill Gates. He doesn't have a Bill Gatesian perspective on the world. But if you read Energy and Civilization, it's a very long book, but I would implore you, if you're interested in the subject, read it. And it answers questions like, why were medieval peasants so poor? Why was there serfdom? Why was there no freedom in the Middle Ages? The answer is energy. Because the only way to generate energy, pretty much, with a few exceptions then, was through muscle, either the muscle of an animal or the muscle of a human. And that led naturally to bondage, total lack of freedom, and like just a grossly impoverished society. Then we start to get the Industrial Revolution, which changed everything for the better. And that's based on fossil fuels. It's based on energy. Energy is the answer to so many questions. Like, why are we prosperous to any degree? Why aren't we medieval peasants, you know, stuck in a bog somewhere trying to find a parsnip? It's energy. So why would anybody want to limit the amount of energy that you can produce? It's, you know, if you keep asking that question, you keep coming at it from different angles, it starts to get like quite frightening. And the only answer is misanthropy or masochism, as I said.
The Tories are calling for an emergency meeting on U.S.-Canada relations, urge Liberals to reveal plan. What are the, if you want to go in polymarks, what do you think the odds of that happening are? 14 months. Remember Carney when he campaigned, that he campaigned on, I have a plan. And he said that Pierre Poilievre had no plan. He said he's the only one that can negotiate with Trump.
But it's
failed on both of those counts. Miserably, too. Not even a little bit. Miserably. It's that, if anything, it continues to get worse for Canada. It continues to get worse. And it seems like willful damage. Maybe Sam should write another book instead of willful blindness, willful damage. Because Catherine Swift, who's been on the show many times, has said, this level of incompetence can only be intentional. Because, I mean, how can you be this incompetent?
But also, this is a perfect opportunity for the Liberals and Liberal-adjacent, Liberal-affiliated that to just call us conservatives traitors again.
Yeah.
And just say,
they've done that.
They just want the Liberals to reveal their excellent hand as they sit at the poker table. But the Liberals aren't that stupid. The Liberals aren't going to tell the dastardly Americans what their plan is. That's a big secret. That's how we're going to win, because it's a secret plan.
And I don't understand this one. They've trotted her out again. This lady that is responsible for the mismanagement of Canada over 10 years. has been trotted out again in another interview, yet another interview, sticking sticks in the Americans' eyes. Just unbelievable. And I don't know if we want to, like, maybe we'll give like 15 seconds of her just so you can get that screech, just like the chalkboard nails, right? Just like give her 15, 20 seconds here.
This is going to be a truly contentious negotiation. It shows that Donald Trump wants to punish Canada, and Canada now has to decide how to respond. The U.S. did not have to impose tariffs to get Canada to negotiate. Canada wants to.
That's good enough. She's now Bloomberg contributor. Did you see that? She is now a contributor to Bloomberg.
I wonder what that's worth.
Propaganda. I don't know. Like, I mean, a waste of time other than like this. It just seems odd. Like I said, we have the food professor coming on tomorrow. What Canadians hostile towards the U.S. often forget is that Canada remains an attractive market for global trade and investment, largely because of CUSMA. I mean, again, I don't know. They seem to ignore that when they're talking, right? Japan comes to Canada to build cars to sell to the United States. Like, most manufacturing set up in Canada is to access the world's largest economy, the world's biggest consumer. Melanie Jolie, it is not to build cars here, Chinese cars here, to sell them to the Middle East. When again, if we consult the globe, I don't know if Melanie has a globe. Do you think Melanie has? Should we send her a globe?
But surely Anita's got one. Maybe they can share that one.
Ridiculous. And then another one from the food professor, like, wine can flow, but why can't food? And we'll talk to the food professor more on this. Canada is a bunch of oligopolies, There's so many oligopolies in Canada that are operating in these protected bubbles. And who pays the price for this? You do. You pay for the price. You pay for the price. In banking, the 5 of the Canadian banks are in the top 10 on the TSX. And they cite in their earnings reports that widening spreads, that means they take more from you each day. They take more from you. Widening spreads, and they have a protected oligopoly. Very hard for other banks to get into this market. Plus, it's a small market. So they have this environment that they can operate in, and they take advantage of you. Cell phones. We pay them almost the most in the world for cell phones. In the world. We pay almost the most in the world for cell phones. Again, protected oligopolies. Rogers, TELUS, and Bell. And a bunch of those little names underneath, Kudu and all these other names, they're just fake names underneath those brands, right, to make it seem like there's more competition, to shush people up. Just, oh, well, there's other brands. There's Virgin and Kudu and all those other ones. Yeah, they're owned by the big ones. They're window dressing. And supply management, one of the worst. The only real industry in Canada protected by federal law that not to be negotiated. You know, tariffs of 200% to 300% on butter and poultry and eggs. And again, heavily slanted towards Quebec. But we'll leave that for the food professor tomorrow because it's going to talk a lot about that. The other oligopolies, the grocery stores. Again, the grocery stores, not enough competition. And one that gets very, very little play, the biggest oligopolies in Canada, mainstream media. We have only a few national outlets, all under the government funding scheme, and they all parrot the same message. We don't have a healthy environment here. We have a bunch of independents like us making noise. Had good conversations with Ian Connerty, and I've had good conversations with other independents, and it's time that the independents get together, and we've got a plan for that as well. So if you could share this message far and wide, get this show out to as many people as possible. We do grow in people watching us. And, you know, it's one of the nicest comments that I've seen recently, and I think I shared it with Ian on the weekend, that these two guys should be doing the 6 o'clock news. What a different place Canada would be if they got a dose of truth in the morning or in the afternoon or at night instead of fed narrative and lies. Imagine that. Imagine the difference in Canada where they have pushback against power. And here's the food professor again. We won't play the interview, but we'll talk to him more about it. He's sitting down. He does a really good podcast as well. sitting down with Martin Lavoie, a CEO of Group Export in Quebec, talking about more Canadian companies leaving. More Canadian companies leaving to the United States because they want access to the US market. And it seems like the Liberal government is trying to hurt the deal, because they come up with excuses all the time, right? One of the excuses recently was, well, we don't want just partial deals. We want the best deal, and we want a complete deal, because there's been opportunities to negotiate deal on certain things, and they said they didn't want it. Meanwhile, Canadians go without. 10 million Canadians now, 10 million Canadians in a nation so rich. You got to remember that number. Burn that one into your memory. But here's Mark Carney bragging about what he has accomplished. This is one of their biggest accomplishments. Look at this. Watch this hotel.
What do you do? What's the first thing you do as you come to the visitor center? Do you have to pay at the visitor center during the summer? No, because of the Canada Strong Pass, you don't have to pay at any of our national parks or national historic sites. And one of the things that happened with that was that we had last year across the country 15% increase in visitors, and even more so in Atlantic Canada. What do you do? What's the first thing you do?
So there you go. What are you complaining about? You don't got enough food to eat, and you have to go with a parent. So it's not really like not pay. You have to go with somebody. So somebody has to pay.
I literally went to one of those museums at the weekend, and it was still Mucho De Niro, because
Right.
yeah, it's just the kids, and the kids don't even have to pay full price anyway.
That's right.
So I mean, the whole thing is an absolute joke. But talking to kids, was there a crowd of kindergartners there behind him? Because that was the tone, wasn't it? And what do you do the first time you go to a museum? What do you do? It's just, how could you be an adult and be receiving that sort of tone and just accept it quietly? I feel like I'd have to go up and say, like, how old do you think I am? Do you think I'm a child? What the hell?
It reminds me of some of the, it's almost like the Democrats, well, they do have a Democratic operative in there, because it's like they pulled the Kamala Harris and Joe Biden playbook out, right? Because remember, they would go to some of these things, right, and talk like that. Joe would talk like that. Joe Biden would talk like that. Kamala Harris would talk like that. These are nothing policies, basically a coupon. These are nothing policies. Like Ian said, he had to pay. What'd you pay to get into the museum?
I can't remember, but it was like for two adults, something like $50 in that area. And
your kids get in free. Big deal.
Obviously,
right?
parking as well.
Yeah.
Kids can't drive themselves there. So, yeah.
So, again,
and that's one of the cheaper ones that I was at as well.
And then just in comparison, like 18 months in, what has he actually done for the consumer? Like, what has he done for the Canadian public? There's been that groceries and essentials benefit, and you got to make less than, like, I think it's like less than 50 grand to see any of those crumbs. So if you're doing that, you're you know what I mean? You're at the food bank lineup already. And then if you look at what some of the policies that Trump has got done for the Americans, that no tax on tips. Why can't, I mean, that's a good one to help people that are making, like making their money through service. No tax on old age security. You get write the interest, you don't have to put that up. Write the interest off on your car. Like, there's so many different things that have been done down there for the American consumer. Where is that done here? Where's anything of any substance other than this coupon? And then Evan Solomon, God Sad, put this out. Evan Solomon put out this piece here. I'm deeply saddened by the horrific attack near Berlin's Christopher Street Gay Day Pride celebrations. My thoughts are with the victims. And God Sad says, you're such a disingenuous schmuck. Your party's immigration policy is creating the same realities here in Canada.
I'm just going to have a look. Sorry. I'm just going to have a quick look at his Twitter account. Yeah. Very odd. So I just wanted to see if you'd mentioned the ideology responsible for that atrocity in Berlin, which is Islamic radicalism, jihadism, whatever, Salafism.
No, I think some of the news outlets said a car. Like a car did it.
Yeah, that car, crazy cars. But it's just a little bit interesting, isn't it? Because I have a feeling that Mr. Solomon would probably have named the ideology if it were something that he didn't like. Something like white nationalists or whatever, some sort of Hitlery looking people. Then I feel like he would have been all over that and said, we've got this sort of thing in Canada as well, and let me reassure Canadians, we don't like Hitler. But since it's Islamic fundamentalism, bit awkward.
And this one here, I follow this young lady on X. We're experiencing the biggest exodus in Canadian history. I've talked to too many people that are leaving. We did that interview with that lawyer too. We're losing 40%, nearly half of the top 1% income earners to America. We've talked about it. At the Liberal convention, they talked about how they're going to put an exit tax on our youth. That'll convince them to stay here, eh?
Have you seen the tweet that you've pictured there, though, at the top there? It's that influencer who used to be quite hostile to the Liberals and Carney, I seem to remember, but then completely changed her tune, and now it says that that's completely made up, what you just read out. So she's done the investigation and decided that it's false.
There you go. Listen to this. Infrastructure Minister Gregor Robertson will not say how much taxpayers stand to lose toll concessions on the Gordie Howe Bridge. The symbolic opening on the Friday was disrupted by a fresh demand for more tolls by U.S. Donald Trump. And Robertson said, this is a collaborative relationship. We've been working on this. So, they're not going to share any more details unless the Americans share the details.
They're not going to share any more deals because it's embarrassing for the Liberal Party, and they don't want the Liberal Party to be embarrassed. Move on. Next subject. We are not going to entertain this. We're not going to indulge this because it's bad for the Liberal Party. And what's bad for the Liberal Party is bad for Canada. I think that's a fair summary.
Trump held that White House Correspondents' Dinner. Remember, they canceled that because of that threat there. They canceled it, and then they said they would re-hold it. You can go to the next slide there. So they did hold the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and he was quite, what's the word? Barbarous. Barbarous is a good word. He pulled out the hat with all the, because White House Correspondents' Dinner, that's all the media there. Me and Ian didn't get an invite this year yet. But he pulled out the hat, 2028, said he's won 3 elections and he's going to run the 4th time. I'm sure there was a lot of melting going on.
He was a bit low energy. I watched some of it and it was kind of sad, actually. He wasn't all there. Don't know if he was tired. Does he get tired? He doesn't seem to think that he does. But he just wasn't all there. And some of the jokes were genuinely funny. Whoever wrote some of those jokes. Like the Barry Weiss one. That was a funny joke. But I just feel like his delivery, usually you can bank on him to deliver better than a comedian. But he wasn't he wasn't on the ball.
He went at Caitlin Collins for a while there, and they just had the back of her head.
That was funny as well.
And then, but Wolf Blitzer was the Blitz was just sitting there in shock. The Blitz. Wolf is such a non-entity at CNN anymore. You know what I mean? He used to be their guy, the Wolf.
Yeah.
Now the Wolf is more like a toothless fox or something. Anyway, he put out a tweet. I don't know who does his social media. That could well be the carbon capture mechanism that Mark Carney is using for CCUS. And anyway, Trump threatening.
He posted a few completely demented AI memes. This wasn't the only one. There was there was several about Iran. Hilarious, really. The AI that he uses is something that makes it extra funny is the AI he uses is particularly crap. It's particularly low quality. It's like the really old ChatGPT one. Quite funny. I must admit.
Anyway, I do want to keep plugging sponsor of the show now too. The BC is Burning. Go watch that video there. We're going to put the link in there, of course. I did that interview with Murray Wilson and talking about forest management in Canada. It's almost, you know, like every time a mill closes, there's less forest management in Canada. And in BC alone, since 2023, 21 mills closed. And recently, another one, in pulp mill in Prince George. We interviewed Ravi Parmar, the forest minister here in British Columbia, and the same situation going on in Ontario. And the pulp mills, there's 2 that closed. I interviewed the mayor of North Cowichan there, and that Domtar closed there. The pulp mills aren't closing because of Trump tariffs. They're closing because of cheap pulp prices in South America. And they want tariffs put on those places because these pulp mills aren't going to survive. And they also cite high energy costs here in Canada, and they can't compete. And they haven't been investing in equipment. So there you go. So it's those policies. High energy prices, no investment. That when they did those manufacturers, 57% of manufacturers said that they won't invest in Canada. 11 years of policy failure. $11 years of policy failure, and then you just have to go and think about that. All the corporations that don't want to invest here, and the pipeline. Think about the pipeline for a second. No oil field company wants to pay for a pipeline because they got stung. They got stung with the last pipelines, Northern Gateway, Energy East, and the Keystone XL, as they started building them and lost millions and millions of dollars as they got kiboshed. And then Teck with Frontier Project. So why would any oil field companies want to go through years of capital outlay to find out that it's going to get kiboshed at the end? Why? The same thing goes for the carbon capture. They don't want to pay for that. It doesn't make any sense. Even the environmentalists say it don't make any sense. So you have 2 boondoggles there. You have $43 billion, that's the estimate right now for a pipeline that you're going to pay for, likely never get built. Not with this government. And then you have another, what is it, like $20 billion, $25 billion for carbon capture that you're going to pay for, that nobody wants. And even the oil field companies said, we're not paying for that because it's a waste of time and money. Environmentalists say it's a waste of time, money, and it's ineffective. But Mark Carney says, we need it. The only way you're getting a pipeline is if we do carbon capture. Who benefits from it? Not you. Not you.
But we are going to benefit because, I mean, the Liberals and CBC have led me to believe that if we get carbon capture facilities in Alberta, then it won't be as hot in Canada in the summer, and there won't be forest fires. Yep. That is how it works, isn't it? Carbon
Apparently.
capture, carbon taxes, carbon markets. Wait a little while, and then it's no longer going to be hot in the summer. That's the deal, isn't it?
Wait till the pockets are stuffed. The pockets are stuffed and you can't stuff any more in. RCMP target foreign agents. This is from Hollywood and Blacklocks. The RCMP say investigators have been reassigned to target foreign interference activities in Ontario. No surveillance subjects were named, though public inquiries have documented wrongdoing by agents working out of the Chinese embassy in Ottawa and the consulate in Toronto. Sam Cooper gets downplayed. Sam Cooper has been breaking most of these stories. Blacklock's here. Like, you know, where's the CBC with these stories? Where is the CBC? We have Gary Clement coming on Wednesday, and we're going to talk a lot about this, right?
But, you know, this is... Sam Cooper's talked quite a lot about it. I think we talked about it when we interviewed him as well. The deal that was done between, you know, the police on that in China and Canada. The great worry is that they're going to just use that to do more of this naughtiness. And they also have a deal on journalists, so-called, who obviously they could just be spies, or they can just be high-level police figures masquerading as journalists. I mean, that's like the oldest trick in the book, isn't it?
Canada doesn't take this seriously. Well, like I said, we'll talk to Gary Clement. The Liberal Party in 2025 disqualified 4 ex-caucus members from running in the campaign on grounds never made public. Why would they, I guess, eh? All were Ontarians. And a majority of the candidates of all parties surveyed by Elections Canada said they believe foreign agents tried to influence voters. Again, we'll talk more about it on Wednesday. Here's Sam Cooper, a Canadian woman of Chinese origin who was an intern at NATO's military headquarters in Belgium, has been arrested on spying charges. Canadian woman, did you hear that? Belgian prosecutors said on Saturday she is suspected of spying on behalf of a third country, guess which country, and being a member of a criminal organization.
It's just NATO. It's not like that. It's that important, is it? NATO. So
Nah.
don't worry about it.
This one here, we've highlighted this a few times, and this has even come to roost here in Kelowna, like burnout for physicians, psychiatrists, OBGYNs, emergency doctors leaving Canada. Burnout. Let's play this little clip here.
More physicians leaving, then I think the emergency care system is going to collapse.
Emergency physician and professor Dr. Kirsten DeWitt says Canada's ER departments are in crisis. She's the co-author of a new study examining burnout of physicians since 2020. Researchers surveyed more than 400 ER doctors from across Canada in 2025 and found that 10% had left the profession. And for those who stayed, nearly 50% cut their clinical hours.
Everybody commented on the increased workload and the deteriorating clinical care. And most physicians felt powerless to change that.
A significant number also reported emotional exhaustion. Toronto ER doctor James Moskalik says ER overcrowding is a big factor.
Admitted patients there for hours and days, which means I have to see your grandmother who fell down the stairs in the hallway. It's not the right place to do medicine. It's not elegant, it's not safe, it's not, it doesn't honor the doctor-patient covenant really. So that erodes our well-being.
Dr. Roderick Lim is the wellness chair for the Canadian Association of Emergency Physicians.
I mean, you can't ramp up immigration to those numbers and overtax a system without causing burnout. Like we say, how many stories have we done on ER closures here in British Columbia, and especially in the interior of British Columbia? We were doing them almost like on a weekly basis. And we talked to so many people on it, and they say they're going to do something. I even interviewed the head of Interior Health here, and they say they got a plan to fix things. Where we've seen the pediatricians en masse resign at Kelowna General Hospital. We saw the same thing en masse in Kamloops Hospital, Royal Inland Hospital, where OBGYNs en masse resign. Saw that in Vernon with the psychiatrists. The healthcare system in Canada is broken, stretched, and stressed. And yet, you get companies like Rogers, Tim Hortons, and that say we need more temporary foreign workers. And when we have high youth unemployment, and yet who gets the press, who gets the stories? Those are the ones that hit the wires there for the mainstream media. We need more temporary foreign workers. Never talk about the repercussions of that. Conestoga College had 86% of their student body was foreign. And that community in Conestoga College had youth unemployment banging on the door 20%. High inflation, couldn't get rents. And the president there of Conestoga College raking it in at over $600,000 for a small college.
But is it any surprise that they need more foreigners to come to Canada so that they can improve their bottom line? Have you seen how expensive it is to get medical care in the United States? Where else are these people going to get medical care? They need to be earning big bucks so that they can dodge Ontario hospitals and Canadian hospitals and go over the border and get seen right away.
And then this one here, a BC woman faces disheartening 5-year wait for a cochlear implant. That is not unusual. BC was sending cancer patients to Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the immigration policy, Lena Diab, it's almost like you hire the most incompetent person you can find, and then you can blame her on the immigration policies. But look at who pays the price for it. She's paying the price for high immigration. She's paying the price, right? You waiting in the waiting room, you're paying the price. You know who wins? Rogers Communications, because they can sell cheap cell phones to more people. Tim Hortons, because they can get cheap labor. In telecom, they get cheap labor. That's Melanie Jolie's brother. A&W. You know, all these corporations that beg for it and scream for it. Meanwhile, Canadians go without. Where's the other end of the story? Where's the, as Paul Harvey used to say, and now for the rest of the story. Policy failure. What the Liberals did for immigration has broken the healthcare system in Canada. And doctors are leaving because they're fed up with it. The Gordie Howe Bridge is open today after months of crossover controversy. Just as a note there. But Elections Canada has verified the signatures in that Stay Free Alberta petition to force an Alberta separation from Canada. So they went and checked those signatures. I'm not going to play the clip because we got to get through a bunch of things. But, you know, they're going to try and push back on that. They're going to do everything they can to stop them from even having a vote, to kibosh democracy. The Department of National Defense here, military polled Trump fears. Department of National Defense polled Canadians and whether they were afraid of U.S. President Donald Trump. The in-house research followed repeated statements by the cabinet that Trump sought to break us so America can own us. What? The respondents, what do you think is the biggest threat to Canada's security and sovereignty in Canada? The largest single response by 19% was Trump, followed by Canada's proximity to the United States. People are brainwashed, and then only 1% said China or Russia. Okay.
If you're interested why the Liberals kind of won that election, why they won a plurality of seats, there you go. They literally believed Mark Carney when he came out with that utter bollocks.
Which makes this one shocking, because when we talked to Brian Isted, a former Army captain, he recognized that, you know, Canada relies on its protection from the United States. And this is that it was a poll of the DND. Might have been the office employees, because I'm sure the soldiers don't believe this. And we had Ian Connerty on here. You can put it on that National Post. We had Ian Connerty on Friday, and he talked about that Carney won that election based on the media, the CBC. And here it is, the front page piece here. They must have been watching our show. CBC fueled source of Carney's power, while the PM felt safe making false statements about the bridge, because there's no consequences, right? No consequences, right? Because after that he got caught, there's been an active campaign on the internet right now, an active campaign to go against anybody that pushes back against it as a anti-Canadian and basically MAGA. They've been doing that. And then saying, I think Spencer Fernando put out a piece that says that the Conservatives need to get their crap together and get all the MAGA people out of their party. What? So the official opposition must be the official backbiters of the Liberals? What's that?
The official scapegoat.
Yeah, or the official scapegoat, or the official, what do you call that? Lackeys. Just do as they say. Just say, oh yeah, okay. As long as we get our salary, that's good. Another piece here, this is from Amy Ham.
I just want to respond. I think a few people in the comments misunderstood my joke earlier. I wasn't talking about healthcare in the United States for Americans. I was talking about Canadians going to America to get healthcare out of pocket. That was the joke. That was the bit. By the way, you missed a bit at the bottom here when you're talking about that, you know, the military poll, Trump fears about how everyone's scared that Trump's going to invade. And then you went on to talk about how Carney has suffered no consequences. And that the last couple of paragraphs there have to be read where it's Justin Trudeau at the time, whenever that was, a couple of years ago, saying his goal, it was like 18 months ago, wasn't it? His goal is to destroy the Canadian economy so he can try to annex the country. Show solidarity. Many of us will be affected by all of this. We will experience difficult times. I ask you to be there for each other. That was probably about the time that he unveiled the tariffs, the counter tariffs, where he was like, $125 billion. And I just find it interesting. You're talking about consequences. What are the consequences for Justin Trudeau? Where is Justin Trudeau right now? I think there's a very, very high chance that he's in the United States. So was that all a crock of bollocks? Was that all untrue? So he's just going to visit the country that he thinks is trying to destroy Canada and annex Canada, so conquer Canada. But he's just down there. It's fine. He's there. He's spending all of his money there. He's got his American girlfriend. Brilliant.
You make a
Great
very
time.
strong point, and that point is most of what comes out of their mouth is just for you, not for them. It is just rhetoric, and it is just falsities and lies and misinformation, disinformation to give them power. Everything seems to seek power and to fill the pockets. And here's Amy Ham, another
Where are the
piece of
consequences? Where are the consequences for this obvious hypocrisy? Has there been a reckoning for Justin Trudeau?
No. Amy Ham, boomers drunk on CBC is a source of carnies power, and I keep saying that. The media is the key. The media in Canada must be defunded. Must be defunded. It is their shield and spear. They use it against the Conservatives. Look at the ramp up. Like right now, the biggest attack job going on by the media is against the Conservatives. After the Prime Minister of Canada caught in an obvious lie, they're focused on Pierre Poilievre, who's basically been out of the media for, I mean, he's not even been in the media. But they needed the scapegoat, so they're just like, bring Pierre Poilievre to the front. You want some press time? We'll give you some press time. And Carney calls some by-elections for 3 ridings in Ontario, Quebec, and BC. Did you know that in the Liberal Party, they voted on that in the Liberal Party, they can't even kick him out. They can't, like the Conservatives can actually have a caucus meeting and vote Poilievre out. But we talked about Ian Connerty there. And in the Liberals, they voted against that. So it's really hard to get rid of Mark Carney. It's almost like, like nobody removes him. The only way you're going to remove him is by election. Or if a bunch mass resignation which forces an election. But there's no, you can't have a caucus meeting and vote him out. And they did that while he was there in 2025. The Liberal caucus voted against it. Voted against adopting the Reform Act. While the Conservatives still have it. They can vote Pierre Poilievre out, but not Mark Carney. It's great.
Which is why there's all that pressure on Poilievre, in part, because there's the possibility of doing that. It is possible to, chuck him out the window. But the Liberal Party is very, very interesting, isn't it? If you just look at the Liberal Party as an institution itself. Look at, earlier on we were talking about how it expelled 4 sitting MPs, prevented them from running. Didn't explain why. Just think about the leadership election. What an opaque affair that was. That was an election that you might see somewhere like Russia, for example. Just totally lacking in transparency. And everything is decided by some anonymous bigwigs in the shadows. But that's the Liberal Party. That's how the Liberal Party is run as an institution. And that institution is in charge of this country. Is it any surprise that, we basically have no transparency at all?
And the other thing that's interesting in the Liberal Party, and Ian Connerty brought it up, is that it used to be the nomination papers weren't signed by the Prime Minister. And then I think Justin Trudeau, he said he was signing 10 of them. And now all of them need to have the blessing of the Prime Minister. So you can make sure you get the most subservient Liberal MPs you can, because basically he's going to either rubber stamp you or deny you. Remember Ruby Dalla? She didn't get the stamp, hey?
So again, we've asked questions about democracy in Canada. There is no democracy in the Liberal Party. There's a lot more than we've even discussed here. There is more. There is more to prove that argument that the Liberal Party is not very democratic, like within itself. So, should any of us be surprised that Canada's democracy is not doing too well?
Sorry, that was John
We tried
Carpe.
to get
Sounds
Ruby,
like John.
Ruby Dalla there on about. We tried to get her on many times. Like, we pushed quite hard. But
Sounds like John Carpe is going to be delayed, so he's not going to come till noon now. He's had something he's got to take care of, so he'll be at noon. Sorry, I'm just getting a text there. I just wanted to put this in. The hottest meme stocks in Canada, this is from Wealthsimple. The banks, Canadian banks. Look at that, eh? Canadian banks. So this looks like what I would call a blow-off top. A blow-off top. Canadian banks enjoy a very, very protected oligopoly in Canada. And do they treat the Canadians consumer with respect because of this oligopoly they have? Or do they take advantage of the Canadian consumer? One just has to read their financial statements where they tell you widening spreads. What do widening spreads mean? That means they charge you more. So they figured, well, hey, where else are you going to go? We're the only game in town. And then they work with each other. The competition between them is very, very minute. The only real competition right now is Wealthsimple, and I've been steering people towards Wealthsimple. Go to Wealthsimple, no transaction fees. You can have margin accounts there now. You can have trading accounts. You can buy gold there. You can buy Bitcoin there, and you can buy fractional shares at zero cost. You get a credit card there. They do mortgages through their partner. They have a lot of zero transactional fees. Consider that, because the Canadian banks, I mean, all of them go operate in the United States. This is where it doesn't work, right? They're allowed to go to the United States, like most of them have a big presence in the United States, TD, Royal. But coming the other way, there's so many hurdles and so many rules, it's very, very hard for American banks to come to Canada. And they've complained about that as well. And yet the Canadian media doesn't cover it, right? They're just like, well, don't say anything, right? Just leave it, it's good. And the Canadian consumer, we don't have 30-year mortgages. Imagine a 30-year mortgage, how much worry is taken out of your mortgage. If you get a 30-year mortgage, you know that that's what your mortgage is going to be for 30 years, or 25-year mortgage. No, in Canada, the best you can do is like a 5-year mortgage, and every 5 years you got to stress and hope interest rates aren't that high so you can afford to pay for your property. Competition is healthy, and they've enjoyed an oligopoly and then still taken advantage of the Canadian consumer at the same time. The same goes for the cell phone companies. The CRTC has penalized them many times for predatory pricing, like all kinds of things, while they enjoy their oligopoly. Look at the profits that Rogers and Bell and TELUS rake in on their cell phone things, so they get a protected oligopoly. Protected oligopolies. And do they give more to the consumer because of it? No. They take advantage of the consumer. Supply management, same thing. Supply management is one of the worst. They spend almost like $80 million a year advertising and lobbying the government. Can you imagine that? If they just gave that back to the consumer, was they dump millions of liters of milk down the drain? We're going to talk to the food professor tomorrow. Yeah, speaking of the food professor here, listen to this here.
And I think a lot of the audience would relate to that in the fact that the media is just covering one side of the story most of the time. And so in February, I wrote for La Presse for 25 years for free. and they decided to let me go because I came out criticizing the subsidy program, the tax credit program supporting media, and that costs the costs are in the millions of dollars. So basically, most media have actually turned into smaller CBCs, and at first I didn't realize it until like we started to deal with some really big issues after COVID, and I saw the bias. Like because I've been working with media for 25 years, and I started to see. So reporters, I give 20, 25 interviews a week, and all of a sudden I was seeing myself being cited in one way versus another, and it was always about protecting Ottawa and the Liberals. It was Trudeau before, now it's Prime Minister Carney, and so whenever I raise the issue about carbon pricing, whenever I raise the issue of supply management, whenever I raise the issue about counter tariffs, of course, President Trump, it's been incredibly frustrating and difficult to really try to inform the public as much as possible. I'm lucky to actually have a connection with the public with my op-eds and the podcast. But when you deal with major networks, you can see that there's an incredible.
Like I said, we're going to have the professor on tomorrow. We'll talk more about it. But like basically, if you talk negatively about this government, you get silenced. And the media is in on it. The media is complicit. And they've been told that not to reach out to him for quotes anymore. Not crazy. Just put that next slide up there.
Well, that's what the food professor says, I suppose. They haven't confirmed or denied it, but yeah, that was his claim.
He's got that AI too. Jewish bakeries vandalized in Toronto. Police attempt to reassure Jews. Police attempting to reassure city Jews that feel unsafe after 2 Jewish-owned bakeries were vandalized. Kiev's Bagel Bar in downtown Toronto was hit by gunfire, police said, while another branch in the city had its windows broken.
Just relentless, really, isn't it? But this is the kind of thing in other countries, let's say, and there's been grumblings, whispers of this here in Canada as well. It's the kind of thing that the IRGC does. Iran does this kind of thing. It's part of their strategic depth, they would probably say, which is, if you side against us, we have many, many ways to get back at you. This being one of them. I'm not saying that that's what this is. There's no suspect identified or whatever, but it's a real sort of, it's a routine practice for them.
Israel ambassador to Canada proposes technology partnership, and that's and it proposes that a way for Canada and his country to patch up their troubled relationship by cooperating on technology. And that's Edu Moed said Canada's Israel relationships are an all-time low, with Mark Carney last year saying Israel's prime minister would be arrested should he visit Canada. But the diplomat said partnership was possible in the likes of Israel's hospital-at-home digital technology.
It's not the only thing that they have a lot of, they've got a really good tech center in Israel.
They are a tech hub.
Tech
they are
sector.
an innovative hub for sure. That's one of their strengths for sure in technology. For a small country like that, strong military, strong tech hub, definitely, and a stronger economy than Canada's. That an economy that's at war is stronger than Canada's. And you pointed out on the globe many times, it's very, very tiny.
Yeah, it's stronger in the terms of better growth. Yeah, which is just astonishing, isn't it, given their situation? But this, I just find this remarkable. Like the Israeli ambassador to Canada is saying relations are at an all-time low. Again, what must they think in Foreign Affairs, what must they think about Carney coming out and saying that he would, he would approve of the Prime Minister of Israel being arrested if he ever came to Canada? I wonder if they realize how stupid that was. You don't say that even about country, like, you wouldn't even say about China. The leader of China, one could argue, if you ask the House of Commons of Canada, the leader of China is implicit in genocide. Would Mark Carney say that the leader of China would be arrested if he came to Canada? You know what I mean? It's just,
Mark
it's
Carney,
such a stupid thing to do. You just wouldn't do that, even if you privately thought that. You would not say, "Oh yeah, of course, Xi Jinping should be arrested if he comes to Canada." You just wouldn't say that, would you? But he decided to do it with Israel. It was such a blunder, such a stupid thing to do.
Mark Carney borrowed money from Xi Jinping, basically himself. He borrowed it from the Chinese Communist Party when he was running Brookfield. Listen to this in BC. You can't get more virtuous than British Columbia. BC to fine blacklist residents who fail to recycle properly. This is what the British Columbia government is focused on, eh? Hey?
This is total bollocks, isn't it?
Isn't it? Just like our economy crashing, people leaving, all this kind of stuff. But hey, bureaucrats in Nanaimo are planning to fine residents who repeatedly put the wrong items in recycling bins. The city's outreach team will begin issuing warnings to non-compliant residents. 3 strikes, $500 fine. That's a bigger fine than if you don't in the foreign lobby thing, or if the MPs
conflict
do something.
of interest as well.
What's that?
The conflict of interest registry or whatever, if you don't file in time. Yeah.
And if you fail, and if you continue to fail, the city will then consider simply blacklisting the residents and refusing to pick up their trash. I think they forgot public flogging. Wouldn't that be a better thing? Just public floggings? Like the old, what do they call that? The docks, where you put your arms and your head in there and then you get the tomatoes. You sell them the tomatoes? Yeah. Well, nobody's going to throw a tomato today because they're too expensive. So you're going to have to figure something else out.
The recycling thing to an extent is annoying in the first place, where you have to do your paper, general garbage, and then metal and plastic. Like, you have to ask yourself, like, why are you doing that? People don't seem to ask themselves that question, but if you actually sit down and think about it, like, why am I doing it? Why am I ordering it like this? The reality is you're doing it so that the city doesn't have to. So they don't have to figure it out. They don't have to do that part. It's basically they've unloaded that bit of labor, that bit of work onto you, while increasing your property tax, obviously, all the time, and decreasing the standard of the service.
They have too many people
they want
working
you to do
there.
that job, and if you don't do that job to an adequate level, then they'll fine you, and maybe even just completely stop providing literally the most basic service that a city is supposed to provide, which is collecting the garbage. They'll just freeze you out. If you don't do the job that they should do themselves, and if you don't do it to a good enough standard, you're out.
Well, they got too many people working there, and they love power. So now all of a sudden this bureaucrat sitting in a tiny room there is just like, well, how do I get power? Well, I can start blacklisting people.
That person, the people responsible for this idea, should be the ones that go around and look through people's garbage and say, all right, that's metal, that's glass, that's paper. Then they would actually have a useful purpose in life rather than this bollocks.
Listen to this clown. This is a New Brunswick MLA, Bill Oliver. They don't even know what they're reading. Listen to this.
One of the dangers associated with creating advocacy offices is that citizens often develop expectations that exceed the powers actually granted to those offices. Here's a more natural flowing version of that section that reads like a legislative speech rather than a series of short points. Madam Speaker, one of my concerns with this legislation is
that Joe Biden?
That's one of the best. I couldn't believe that when I saw it. It was one of the best videos.
He didn't even catch it. He didn't even catch it.
No. That was really good.
Reminds me of, what was that stupid network? What was that show where they had the guy just read the teleprompter all the time?
Oh, is that Anchorman or something?
Anchorman, yeah.
The comedy, yeah. Yeah, it's a bit like
read it
that. But he actually did it. Now, here's a more free-flowing version. How could you not hear yourself?
Well,
But
Joe
the funny thing
Biden
is,
read out when he
he'll
was
just
doing
blame
his.
the kid. He blamed the kid that works for him. And that is probably who's ultimately to blame for this mishap. But nonetheless, if you're going to outsource your speech writing to like 22-year-olds who only know how to use ChatGPT, then that's going to happen, isn't it?
Is that John? Yeah. Looks like John is joining us here at 10:30 here. So we're gonna jump John in here. So he's coming in. So as soon as Nick gets him in there, we'll have John join us here. Sounds like a good name there. But it's crazy though, eh? This guy here just reads it out. Remember Joe Biden read out pause because he had his speech and then he was supposed to pause. But he read out, he'd do his speech and then pause. Actually reading out the actions he's supposed to do.
He did a few funny things like that as well, where he'd say, "I'm not supposed to talk to you." Or like, didn't he once read out, like, "Ask the New York Times first," or something like that?
Yeah, that's what he wrote.
He was good. He was good for that.
He had the reporter's questions there and who he was supposed to ask next. Crazy. Okay, John's going to jump in here. Hey, John, how you doing?
Good morning.
Howdy.
I'm well. How are you?
We're doing well. We heard that you weren't going to make it, and then all of a sudden you're here.
I apologize. I thought I was on for 10:30, not 10:15. It's my fault entirely.
Well, there you go. You're here. And Julian said you're going to give us a bit of a breakdown. You've got a 8-point plan here to restore privacy protections here in Canada.
We just, yes, we released a report last week looking at the recent legislation like Bills C-34, C-22, C-8. We also reviewed existing legislation like the Borders Act, which allows border officials to search our cell phones. And we also covered some of the Supreme Court rulings. I've been highly critical of the Supreme Court and Canadian courts generally for upholding lockdown measures without taking a hard look at the evidence and just writing the media narrative into the court ruling. But on this issue of privacy, the Supreme Court has been outstanding. They have ruled that there is a reasonable expectation of privacy in a text that you send to somebody else, for example. So if you send a text to Mark Smith, the police need a warrant to search Mark Smith's phone. They can't just, stop him for a speeding ticket and then search his cell phone. They actually need a court warrant. That's just one of the examples of principles that the Supreme Court has laid down.
So go ahead, John.
So the laws in summary, so Bill C-8 empowers the federal cabinet to order companies like Signal and Telegram and virtual private networks to set up their software and their communications infrastructure in a way to make it easily searchable by government. And C-22 has similar provisions. So Signal is one example of several companies that have said they will no longer do business in Canada because they can no longer promise their customers confidentiality with end-to-end and encrypted communications. So wait and see if Signal follows through on that.
Yeah, there's been a few that have said that, right? That have said that they're not creating backdoors for the government to get access into their systems.
Exactly. In a way, I mean, I would be saddened if Signal or any other company left Canada and no longer provided services to Canadians. Although in another way, it would be a good thing because it would demonstrate how flawed the legislation is, and theoretically at least could get the government to reconsider and to repeal those provisions that violate the privacy of Canadians. So we'll have to wait and see if Signal and other companies will leave Canada. And then you've got C-34. It's all for the kids. We must think of the children. So let's impose a social media ban on minors or teens under 16. This has been tried in Australia, and there was a government report, an interim report, progress report, stating that 70% of teenagers were still, 70% of the under 16s were still accessing social media by using fake IDs, fake names, borrowing ID from parents, friends, older brother, sister. And this is scary because then the next logical step, if you actually want to make an under 16 social media ban effective, you have to impose identity verification and age verification on every single user of social media, right? So it sounds like we're going to protect the youngins, but in reality, it's every adult will need to have a facial scan or biometrics or digital ID, government issued ID. This is how this surveillance state comes closer and closer. It's small step after small step after small step. And I actually think, though, if some of these laws are challenged in court, that there's actually a high likelihood of success because this legislation is contrary to at least 4 Supreme Court rulings that I'm aware of.
Yeah, so likely these things will need to go to court because the Liberals have that manufactured majority now to push these through. I mean, there's not much stopping them from doing it other than, court challenges and people's uproar, I guess, and that helps. That's where you can go to your website at the jccf.ca and you can actually, send in letters and stuff like that. But I mean, other than that, I mean, Mark Miller seems hell-bent on pushing these through to control freedom of speech. And we're seeing some of that even like right now with Mark Carney getting caught in, what seems like an obvious lie. And then the media go out and attack any conservative voices and then trying to paint them as anti-Canadian and MAGA and all these things in these smear campaigns. Like it's almost like they have a concerted voice. The media and the Liberal government seem very much tied together in this, the campaign to silence people's, ability to have freedom of speech here in Canada.
He who pays the piper calls the tunes is the old saying, and these media are government funded. And from time to time, they might maybe report on a scandal a little bit, corruption, dishonesty, lying. But the fact of the matter is you're just not going to aggressively go after, you're not going to bite the hand that feeds you, and you're not going to aggressively embarrass or harm the political fortunes of the people who are paying you. Technically, it's the government, but currently it's a government controlled by a manufactured majority in the House of Commons. So, I mean, I am so grateful for the work that you are doing, and independent media like Juno News and The Rebel, The Western Standard, The Epoch Times, hundreds of independent podcasters and videocasters. And so the good news is the CBC is dying a slow and well-deserved death. Its viewership is primarily elderly, and the reality is these people are slowly dying, and the CBC's viewership is getting smaller and smaller. It's going to become harder and harder for them to justify the $1.4 billion per year when there's so few Canadians actually listening to the CBC or watching the CBC on the screen.
Well, that machine is actually targeting some of the independent voices too. We're going to have Jasmine Lane on Friday because, they're actually going after, and calling them anti-Canadian and MAGA and all these things. Like they create a word, MAGA or whatever, and then they want to go and attach that to whoever goes against their narrative. And it is, again, another suppression of speech. One thing I do want to ask you this question, because there's a lot of people in the ones that don't want you to speak are anti-X, right? They don't like X as a freedom of speech platform. They really hate it, and they want to push you to Blue Sky. But if you look at Blue Sky in its usage, you know what I mean? Because right now, Blue Sky should be full of, because if what they say is true, the majority of the people would be on Blue Sky right now, not on X. But it is about 3% of the X, you know what I mean? X is about 30 to 35 times larger in scale of daily users. So they didn't go to Blue Sky. And Ian says a lot of times, Blue Sky is like a ghost town, an echo chamber of just the virtuous. Maybe I'll let Ian jump in right there because I know he loves Blue Sky.
all I've said is, and anybody can test this out themselves. they aren't shy about inciting violence and whatnot on that website. It's just, typically from a left perspective. So I suppose that makes it okay.
Interestingly, the Supreme Court of Canada, this is roughly 6 months ago, I'm not sure, but definitely within the past year, announced that they were taking down their X account and they would no longer be communicating with X. And that is a nakedly political decision because I think people understand, and people appreciate that X is a free speech platform where you are unlikely, or at least less likely, to have some anonymous so-called fact checker declare that you're spreading false information. And it's ironic because Chief Justice Wagner behaves like a politician. He's taken the Supreme Court on tour, was characterized by Canadian press as a road show. And these judges who are supposed to be, dignified and aloof, judges should be not pressing the flesh and going around the country holding public meetings, trying to increase their own popularity. That's not how judges should behave. And so ironically, on the one hand, they say, well, we want to reach out to Canadians, and Canadians have to better understand the work of the courts. So they've gone to Victoria, they've gone to the Northwest Territories, they've gone to Winnipeg, they've gone to New Brunswick. And yet at the same time, while supposedly wanting to get the word out, they took down their X account.
Any word on Wagner and the Supreme Court to hear the Freedom Convoy, the use of the Emergencies Act?
You and I will probably find out at the same time, because the courts typically, they give 1 day, sometimes 2 or 3 days or a week, but typically they give 24 hours notice and they say, tomorrow at 10 a.m., we are releasing our decision on whether or not we're going to hear the federal government's appeal of its 2 losses in 2 lower courts about its abuse of the Emergencies Act and not complying with the conditions set out in the Emergencies Act.
Ian, any questions for John this morning?
I'm just looking at your I'm looking at the press release that you're talking about, the 8 changes that you'd like, 8-step roadmap to restore Canadians' privacy. And what's really screaming out at me here is the Customs Act, because I must admit, I didn't know this. I was ignorant of this. I mean, I could have suspected it, but border guards can search your phone and get everything on your phone, and you're not in a position to say no. Is that right?
Yeah. This is why we did a thorough review of existing legislation as well. So yeah, we need to change that provision that now allows border guards to search your phone. It's absolutely outrageous. Now, again, the warrant is available. So if there are reasonable grounds to believe that, let's call him Mark Smith, that he's got child porn on his phone, you can get a warrant, and the warrant can be in place. So the next time he comes back into Canada, oh, we're going to take a look at your phone right now. Oh, and here's the warrant. Oh, and we got child pornography on your phone. Okay, we got you. We're going to charge you criminally, etc. It's this crazy notion that law enforcement does not need to be checked. I'm pro law enforcement. I want to fight crime. I want to stop the terrorists and the child pornographers and everybody else as much as anybody else. I'm pro law enforcement, and the system we've crafted over the course of centuries is a balance between law enforcement's need to sometimes get into violate the privacy of suspected criminals. They need to do that, otherwise they can't do their job. At the same time, we have privacy rights and property rights. They're not in the charter, but at common law we have property rights. So the balance that we struck is to say that police can go to court, the court being independent, and they look at whether there's a need for the police to have this, and they can get a warrant from the court, and they can go ahead and violate the privacy where that's necessary and beneficial. And that's a balance we're moving away from. Some of the bills like C-22, the Lawful Access Act, lowers the standard for getting a warrant from reasonable and probable grounds to believe that a crime has been committed or is being committed, down to a much lower standard of reasonable grounds to suspect. And suspicions, to say I suspect something or to say that I believe something, those are two very different things.
And yeah, I mean, a phone now, I mean, you explain here, it provides a window into nearly every aspect of a person's private life. Absolutely, yeah. Health, you say. But also if you got hold of, we've talked about this, Jim and I, a few times. If you got hold of somebody's chatbot, like AI, somebody who's a frequent user of that, people use that. Like it's a whole different level of confidence that people have in.
Well, they use it for like psychological
speak in
stuff.
their
You know what I
mind.
mean? Like, is there a psychiatrist or
Yeah.
a psychologist or?
Yeah, so you can literally get. I mean, it's not an exaggeration to say you can get inside of somebody's skull. It's the closest that you could get. And you're saying a border guard. So what happens if? So you're a citizen of Canada. You've been somewhere. You come back. They say, "Show me your phone," or I assume you mean like type the PIN in. What if you say no? What is the penalty?
I don't know off the top of my head, but these people at the border have a lot of power. I mean, they might possibly detain you.
Seize it.
Silver lining on the cloud. I guess somebody could start a court challenge against the provisions of the Customs Act that empower these people to do it, and you could argue in court that they had no right to search your phone in the first place, pursuant to Supreme Court of Canada jurisprudence. Now, the problem with that is that, practically speaking, these court actions take years, and somebody between a rock and a hard place, typically people who are coming back into Canada, they want to go home, whether they've been away for 2 days or 2 months or 2 years, they want to get back home, right? So people are, the vast majority of people are not likely to challenge this, and they'll just do as they're told.
But do you remember, I'm just astonished by this, just the sort of last word on it. Do you remember when Carney and the ministers went to Beijing not so long ago, and there was all kinds of chatter about how they were going to take burner phones because they didn't want the Chinese to extract all the information from their phones? I just find that it's a little bit too on the nose that a Canadian citizen coming back to their own country can have, in effect, their mind read by just a low-level CBSA official, who just feels like it because they think you look a bit funny. That's quite remarkable.
It's outrageous, and the hypocrisy is absolutely disgusting. I mean, it's the same hypocrisy we see with the elites pushing, and this might be changing now, but for the last few years, there's this steady push towards everybody buying and using only electric vehicles. So we get to a point where nobody's filling up their car with gas anymore. That has been the public policy trend. Yet, when Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at that time went to Paris for this climate summit, they took 300 people. 300 people flew across the Atlantic to go to Paris, including I believe a cook. There's a full-time photographer. Good grief. I mean, they could have contracted I'm sure that Paris has photographers who speak English, who can do a good job. No. We're going to fly somebody over from Canada. So it's like free speech for me, but not for thee. They want to be able to speak freely without censorship. They don't want to accord that same right to other people. They want us to be driving electric vehicles, but they're going to fly 300 people across the ocean for a climate summit, of all things. And then here you have talk of Carney and company taking burner phones to China to preserve their privacy. But the law of the land is that your cell phone can be searched by low-level civil servant.
You missed the story where he had a burner phone to speak to other nations too, like in the Wall Street Journal exposed that, where he was using like a burner phone to communicate with the likes of Starmer and some other people in the East and in Europe there to move people away from America. Weird.
Well, people.
I'm interested. Oh, sorry.
Well, hypocrisy is a red flag. It's kind of, wait a minute, is this actually true and right and good? This policy, if the people implementing it themselves are not even doing it? It's a very fair question to ask.
I think it's the norm. Ian and I talked about it today. It's the norm. Like, I mean, for the Liberal Party, it is the norm. This is not the exception. Like the hypocrisy. Most of the stuff they say at the podium is for you, not for them.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, that's my last question, then Jim can have you to himself. About Bill C-34, you said earlier, you talked about this sort of gradual steps being taken towards a surveillance state. And then you also talked about, how it's the children, and that's kind of but that's not the true reason. I'm interested in if, do you think this is intentional? This is like all being put together like a jigsaw puzzle by somebody with a dark mind that really wants this? Is that their end? Or are they actually, is it just like incompetence and it's like, okay, we'll do this because it's popular with suburban women or something and we need that demographic to win the next election. We'll do this, and then it all just adds up together and all of a sudden Gary Ananda Sangari is like in charge of the Gestapo. Is it like that, or is it actually the really smart people actually want to do this? This is intentional.
Well, it's both. I think that there are some people who view it as a very good thing to have a surveillance state to make sure that bad people, like those who have perhaps religious views, conservative views, libertarian views, that they are silenced, that they are relegated to second-class citizenship, and that the government can advance equity, diversity, inclusion, and can save the planet from the climate holocaust. So there are some people who decidedly, and they probably wouldn't admit it publicly because they know it's not going to go over well, but there are people who very much want a surveillance state. I suggest that they are a pretty small number. The bigger problem is you have well-intentioned people, who want to protect children from social media harm. They want to protect children and adults from the harm that can flow from an AI chat box if you are relying on it for legal advice, relationship advice, psychiatric advice. So there's people with good intentions that want to prevent harms, and they are naive. Unfortunately, they are naive about the true nature of government, which is that government is made up of people. Human nature is a mix of good and evil. Governments can do great and wonderful things. They can build roads and bridges. They can, fund the police force and the fire department. They can set up and administer an independent court system. So I'm not an anarchist. Government can do great things. However, there's a dark side to government. More people in the 20th century were murdered by their own government than the number of soldiers who died in the battlefield. When you add up the death toll of the likes of Stalin and Mao Zedong and Adolf Hitler and Pol Pot, we're looking at tens of millions of people murdered by their own government. So here's the point. There are well-intentioned people who are naive about the dark side of government, they sincerely believe they're doing the best thing by slowly building up the surveillance state.
I got a question for you, and it might be a weird one. You do a lot of work in protecting people's privacy, but this is the other side of that spectrum. All the information that the government owns is the taxpayers as well, right? That is all the property of the taxpayer, right? But the Liberal government here has been very reluctant to share any information. Even that bridge thing was released by an American media outlet. Have you done any work in regards to making like all this stuff that, they shut down committees, they won't release documents, like these documents, the vaccine records sealed for 15 years. Have you done any work to say you must release the information that belongs to the Canadian taxpayer? Is there anything in the charter that protects us for that way?
We take on as many court actions as possible. At the same time, and we've got a fantastic legal team of a dozen lawyers and paralegals working on over 80 different court cases all across Canada. So we take on as much as we can. I think that, yes, a decision, for example, we have the decision of, I forget which federal department, that there will be no information released about the Aboriginals in Kamloops not using the $12 million to conduct an excavation to find out the truth about whether there's anybody buried there, or whether the ground penetrating radar simply beeped when it sensed some stones or irrigation pipes or sewage pipes or tree stumps under the ground. So here's an example where conceivably that could be taken to court, and we'll talk about it with the legal team. So yes, you can challenge government decisions to withhold information from the public. That can be challenged in court.
Like, you've done a lot of work on COVID. You've done a few reports on the COVID, on reporting on COVID, and the one where they're sealing those vaccine records for 15 years seems to be, like, it seems odd that they just picked an arbitrary number like 15 years, obviously, so that, you know, anybody that is going to complain about it is long gone or whatever. It seems to be a detriment to the health of Canadians too. We should be looking at what was done right, what was done wrong. Why would they want to seal those records for 15 years?
No, it's nefarious. There's no excuse for it. I mean, theoretically, a pretext could be we want to protect the privacy of patients, but that would be completely false, because you can release data without violating any patient confidentiality. You know, provinces have records as to how many back surgeries and knee surgeries and you know, whatever. We have all this data, and that can be publicly released without anybody knowing, you know, who got the back surgery or who got this or that surgery.
Agreed. Well, John, we do thank you for your time. We got to finish up our news here. And as always, we do thank you for coming on this show and sharing information and fighting for people's rights and freedoms. And if you like the work that John Carpe and the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms does, you can go to jccf.ca and you can contribute to their cause, because like John said, they got like a bunch of active cases out there, and they're working all the time. And there's not very many groups out there that do this in Canada. In the United States, there's a lot more for sure. But in Canada, few and far between. And Canada seems to be, especially with the government, seems more like in compressing our freedoms and rights here than in the United States, where they have that absolute right to freedom of speech.
Thank you for having me on your show. Have a great rest of the day.
You too as well. And we're going to finish up our show here. Thank you, John. And Ian and I are going to finish up our show for the day here. We do have, what's that?
I was just looking because I was very curious about what happens if you don't give your phone to the CBSA.
Seize
They
it.
ask for it. Yeah, they seize it. But there seems to be, I mean, I haven't got time to like really confirm this, but there seems to be some kind of legal dispute about whether they can, whether they can legally obtain your password. So they seize it, but they might not actually get your
that was
password.
the thing
So they might just have a
UK.
useless phone that they can't use.
That was the big fight in the UK. They wanted Apple to provide the way in, and Apple's like, nah, don't think so, right?
But to Apple's credit, they've been saying no to that for a long time, to lots of countries, haven't they?
Because what that would do is people wouldn't buy Apple phones. They would buy the phone that wouldn't allow it, right? It would hurt their, you know what I mean? Like, another way around it is stop, like don't carry a phone across the border, buy a phone down there, and then, you know what I mean? Then just, because everything's in the cloud anyway, kind of thing, other than what's personally on your phone. But, your mail and your, all your social channels are all cloud-based, right? So really, what are you storing on your phone? Your text messages. But, I mean, if you're just going for a couple of weeks, then just, you're texting but I mean, like, if I can go from computer to computer to computer, and there's nothing that I need, you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing that I keep on my local drive that I need.
Yeah.
Here's another one.
That's probably what the people who are really conscious of it do. They probably just leave their phone at home, buy a throwaway phone, and wherever they go. Here's
another one where the control of information is so important in allowing the people to speak. That's why independent media is so bloody important. Support all the independent media you can find. Listen to this here. This is in a sanctuary city council here. Listen to this here, as the aide helps the mayor here. Listen. Let's gotta listen closely though.
So we should go over this disruptions thing, because if we want to ban somebody in the future, like to impact that, take them out. You have to point out and specifically say who's being
But we're going to say attorney, we can't do that.
do it last time.
Can't. So no, I spent my first 6 months going through this. I wanted to give people like probation. Like you can't come.
Look at that, eh? She realized that she's on a hot mic. That's good, Nick. She's like, oh, we can just kick them out. She's like, oh, hot mic.
She looked like she was. Looks like she was killing a rat that was about to crawl onto her baby. Like,
is that just like horrific though? And we can just kick them out. And he says, well, we tried that. The lawyer says we can't do that. Oh, well.
And also just realize immediately that what they've done is absolutely disgraceful. And the shame and the fear.
These people should be driven out of politics. If there's the information belongs to the public. The vaccine records belong to the public. The bridge records belong to the public. And that's both bridges, Mark Carney. The PEI bridge, the other bridge, those are Canadian tax dollars. They're not Mark Carney dollars. They're not Liberal Party dollars. They belong to the taxpayer. Stephen Guilbeault, if you had any kind of integrity, you would release the documents that are in question on the companies where you were alleged to have funneled money into your own companies. Why wouldn't you just release the documents? Justin Trudeau, We Charity, Justin Trudeau parades, Chrystia Freeland, $50 billion into EV strategies, $25 billion to the Ukraine, and she walks around completely unfettered and is just still spewing nonsense, right? Where's the accountability? You want accountability? You're going to have to change the government. Somebody says, I need to write a letter. Where was that, Jim? That lawyer there? Or sorry, that mayor? I'll have to find it for you. I'll have to go click in there. This is, I'll find it for you. But if you can go on that...
You just type in Kevin McCarthy.
I believe it's in Canada.
Mayor of Sacramento.
Sacramento, there you go. But it's like if you go to the reallybigshow.ca, go to the bottom there, you can find all the MP addresses and say, I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore. This money, need an add another doled out money to Pakistan, and then another, how many millions to Zelensky there? Well, Canadians go without. Literally children are going without food. A lot of people, I hear from people, they say they haven't had meat for a long time. Somebody says they're living off bologna sandwiches. And, somebody might say, well, you're lucky you got bologna. It's pretty sad. Well, that brings us to the best part of the show. I don't know if it's the best part of the show, but we always like to do this day in history to show you that as bad as it seems, it always gets better. And there's a dark cloud right now in our economy. And as we talked about the loonie looking very, very sick. 1794, the fall of the Maximilian Robespierre. I said that wrong, I'm sure, eh?
The Maximilian. Maximilian was his name. That's his first name.
In the French Revolution there, was overthrown and arrested by the National Convention. See, people can get arrested. And that trial didn't last very long, though, right? He was executed the next day, so his trial was speedy, I guess, eh?
Well, this was, the reign of terror. And he was at the forefront of that. He was killing people left, right, and center. And then, as often happens, the revolution also killed him.
1830, the July Revolution begins in France. Uprisings against King Charles X started in Paris, leading to his abdication and the rise of Louis Philippe. There you go.
Yeah, lots of French history. It's usually absolutely crackers French history like that.
1866, first successful transatlantic telegraph cable completed. There you go. Remember that?
They did that amazingly.
What's that?
Quickly. They laid that very quickly as well. They literally...
Couldn't do that today. That would be like, if they had to do that same thing today, that would probably take 15 years of planning by the Major Projects Office, another, 15 years in court.
They would have to map out the entire Atlantic Ocean seabed to make sure that there's no rare form of plankton that might be upset.
1890, Vincent van Gogh shoots himself. And he died 2 days later.
He was rather a good bean.
In 1909, Orville Wright's record military flight. Orville Wright and Lieutenant Frank Lamb flew the Wright military flight over an hour over Fort Myer, Virginia. You know, air supremacy is still in the military is one of the biggest things, right? I mean, that's, the American military might is that air supremacy, right? And it was kind of interesting that air supremacy, like the Germans, obviously, that was one of their big things, right? With the Luftwaffe there, like the bombing of London and all that. But the other countries ramped up quickly, right? I think the Americans are putting on a plane. I can't remember this exactly, but they turned assembly lines, like I think the Ford assembly lines into like aircraft. I think they were churning one on. This is memory now, like an hour a plane or something like that. They were just ripping them out because they took the Henry Ford's Model T kind of like idea and were just like, because before that they were building each plane kind of like a one-off, and then they turned it into an assembly line. Need is the mother of invention, right? Need is the mother of invention.
But this is also like, when we've been having a laugh at Admiral Yamamoto's expense and the Imperial Japan, that they thought Pearl Harbor attacking the Americans was a good idea. And then you see the kind of when America was really put to it, the industrial behemoth that was unleashed upon the world, where they started to knock out these planes. Remarkable, really. Just impossible to ever imagine defeating the American industrial machine then. Because they were sending it to Europe, they sent it to Russians, the British, fighting Japan, fighting Germany, all at the same time. And it's not like America was in like full-blown war economy mode or anything. It was just like ordinary life, really.
Well, one of the things America had that Japan lacked was Texas tea, black gold, energy. Without energy, America could never have responded the way it did.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that is considered to be one of the provocations. I don't really like to look at it that way, but America boycotted Japan. Japan sourced something like 50 or more % of its oil from the United States. And then the US just said, we're not going to sell you anymore. That was related to Japanese imperial adventures in the Pacific. And then Japan tried to replace that oil by taking over Indonesia, taking it off the Dutch. But that wasn't sufficient. And that sort of played into their decision to bomb Pearl Harbor. Rather foolish.
1921, isolated Canadian surgeon Frederick Banting and medical student Charles Best successfully isolated the hormone insulin at the U of T, a breakthrough that saved millions of lives that had diabetes. And the biggest one, 1940, Bugs Bunny showed up. Makes his official debut. See if Nick can find a Bugs Bunny cartoon. The classic Merry Melodies short. Bugs Bunny, what's up, Doc? What's up, Doc? That's my favorite cartoon, Bugs. Bugs Bunny. I wasn't a big fan of Elmer the Fudd.
Bit too haughty, bit too arrogant. I prefer Daffy myself.
Really? You like the Daffy Duck? That's all, folks.
That's not Daffy Duck, is it?
No, I think it's Elmer Fudd. That's Elmer Fudd.
Yeah, Elmer Fudd,
That's all, folks.
I like Daffy Duck because he's got the orange and black colorway, which is good. Very good aesthetic.
Didn't he do that?
Yeah. I think so. But Donald also was in that sort of area, wasn't he? But he just looked cool, and he was always like pissed off. He was always a bit angry with people, disappointed in people. I've got to respect him.
He's the sarcastic. He's the British comic, like British cartoon.
The British duck.
The British duck. The hotel. The British built Comet, the world's first commercial jet airline, made its maiden test flight, ushering in jet age for passengers. I didn't know that. Look at that. The British did that. The British built Comet, the world's first jet commercial airliner. Huh. I didn't know that.
You might be asking, why have I never heard of it? Why have I only heard of the Boeing's offerings? And the reason is the British invented it, just like they invented lots of things. I mean, the British are absolutely expert at inventing things and then completely screwing it up when it comes to commercializing. And the Comet crashed. I think there were 4 crashes in like 18 months or something like that. It was something to do with the windows, and basically just trashed their reputation. They had to recall the line, and Boeing slipped in with the 707, I think it was, that Boeing, their first really successful one, wasn't it?
Also
Yeah.
on this day in 1953, the Korean War armistice was signed. There you go. Representatives of the United Nations, North Korea and China signed the armistice. I'm not going to pronounce that name. Panmunjom?
Yeah. Panmunjom.
Ending 3 years of war.
That's a totally nuts war that basically nobody knows anything about, but should. Thousands of, I think thousands of Canadians dead in that war, British as well, and Americans obviously, but like God knows, a horrible number of Americans killed, and it was direct fighting with the Chinese. You know, it's called the Korean War, but it was, in many cases, it was US and British and Canadian and I think Australian soldiers killing and being killed by the Chinese. It was like an undeclared war between China and the West.
And someone says Ian's related to Monty Burns. There you go. And then 1996 Centennial Olympic Park bombing. A pipe bomb exploded during the Atlanta Summer Olympics, killing one person, injuring more than 100. And then this one's for you.
Rudolph.
This one's for you. James Bond. London Olympics opening ceremony. Queen Elizabeth II parachuted into the stadium with James Bond, Daniel Craig, in a memorable film sequence that opened the games. Is that true? I didn't even know that. That's pretty sweet, eh?
Yeah, but it's... Have you not seen it? It's quite famous. Where it makes it look like the Queen parachuted. It was quite kind of funny. But that opening ceremony, God, it's very controversial in the discourse. People talk about it a lot. Because they sort of just... They made loads of like progressive left-wing institutions and left-wing ideas and stuff. They kind of just made that into representative of Britain. And it was resented by a lot of people of a conservative bent. You know, kind of like the Liberals do with Canada, where they equate Canada and Canadian patriotism with the Liberal Party and liberal values. There was a bit of that going on. But obviously the Queen jumping out of a plane was not, you know, a model. It was like a dummy looking like the Queen. That was apolitical, I believe.
Who's your favorite Bond character? Who was your favorite Bond? I got mine.
Actor?
Here.
You mean actor?
Yeah.
Without question, without rival, Sean Connery. It's the only one it could possibly be.
Roger Moore.
He's funny. He's quite funny.
I like Roger Moore.
I also like the Irish fella whose name I've Pierce Brosnan. He was pretty good. Like that sort of slimy, greasy, suave attitude.
A lot of Sean Connery fans for sure. Sean Connery obviously he's a tough guy, right? But Roger Moore seemed a little more what you call stealth. You know what I mean? Because Sean Connery looked, you know, like that he was a tough guy. Roger Moore, not so much, right? A little disarming.
Moonraker? Yeah.
There you go. Someone says favorite actor, Roger Moore. There you go. Sean, the Saint. Yeah, Roger Moore played the Saint as well. One of my favorite shows as well.
Sean Connery, I mean, God bless Roger Moore, but Sean Connery was also, not only did he look really cool, and not only was he the original, but he's also a good actor, like a really, really good presence. He was amazing, Sean Connery. Very, perfect for that job, I think. It's a shame that he seemed to dislike it.
There was some bad James Bonds, though, for sure, right?
Oh, yeah. The one where he came back. What was that one called again? They paid him like God knows how much money to bring him back to make. I can't remember what it's called now, but that one's a bit. But the classics, obviously, like Goldfinger, Dr. No.
Can you find a Roger Moore pick, Nick, and put it up there? Shaken, not stirred. Best line from Roger Moore, or from Bond, James Bond.
Somebody said I loved his voice. I assume you're talking about Connery, because Roger Moore also had a funny voice. So it could be either.
Yeah. I think that's it is as Nick looks for a picture. There's Roger Moore. There you go. Cigarette and a drink. Look at that. Pretty snappy guy, hey?
He was like quite a funny dude as well when he talked about his life in retrospect. He was like he was very well aware that he'd like hit the lottery, hit the jackpot, and he was like talked about it as being a good life.
He was the George Michael of Bonds. How's that? There you go.
Went cruising in public toilets.
It was quite the franchise, actually, right? The Bond franchise, big franchise.
Well, now they need to find a replacement. They need to make sure that they get a really good one.
Yeah,
I think they should obviously do that fella who does that English bloke who plays The Witcher or whatever is it called? I can't remember his name now. Henry somebody. He's the obvious one who literally looks like a cartoon version of James Bond. So he should be James Bond.
Henry Cavill? Is that for Batman?
Henry Cavill, yeah. Is he Batman? No, was he Superman? I think he was Superman.
Yeah,
but he should obviously, I mean, just look at the picture of the bloke.
And I'm going to say the best Batman was, I really liked Michael Keaton and also Christian Bale, obviously those two. But
yeah, I don't know. I was never really a Batman man.
What's the last Batman?
I would probably be more of a Joker man.
What's the last Batman? He was horrible. Ben Affleck.
Robert Pattinson or something?
Ben Affleck, like.
All right, yeah.
Robert who? Robert Pattinson.
Yeah,
there you go.
Bobby.
Henry Cavill, Gay Bond? Gay Bond.
Borat Bond? Oh yeah, they were. I did see that. Somebody did mention Sacha Baron Cohen as a potential Bond. That would not work, I don't think.
That's like putting that, what's her name, that Rachel, whatever her name is, Zellweger as Cinderella. What a dud that was. Anyway, we're going too long now. We're just turning it into a...
We should just keep going here. What are the... Do you want to do Star Wars next?
Star Wars? Batgirl?
Star Wars hasn't been good in a long time.
I hear the new Supergirl is a dud too. I do want to watch it, but I hear it's a dud, so... Cara Danvers. Trump is Bond. There you go. Trump Bond. Some are saying the greatest Bond ever. When they does the name.
He asked me, do you want it shaken or do you want it stirred?
When they say like, name, Trump. I don't know. The greatest Bond ever. Yeah, anyway. That's it. That's our show. We're getting punchy now, so... We appreciate you. We're back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. PST, and we're back with the food. What time is the food professor joining us tomorrow? Does anybody know? It's in the calendar.
Should be lunch, really, shouldn't it? Lunchtime, if
it's the food professor. I think
he wants to stay on topic.
Too. What's that? No, the food professor is coming for early lunch. He's coming at 10 a.m., so it'll be a Winnipeg lunch.
Just not even 11s. Yeah, I don't know what time.
Second breakfast, maybe.
Hangover breakfast.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of the Craig guy or whatever his name is either.
Daniel Craig, though, that Casino Royale, I think that was the first one that Daniel Craig made. That's a really good film.
Yeah, I never liked
the one where where he has to I mean, it's not a spoiler at this point, where he has to defibrillate himself. That's good. That's good cinema.
I can honestly say I didn't watch it because I didn't like him, so I didn't watch that Bond.
Oh, it's well good because there's that Dutch fella. I think he's Dutch. Anyway, the actor who plays the villain is really good as well. It's a good film, though.
Cheers. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. PST, and the food professor will join us tomorrow. And then Wednesday, we got Gary Clement, former RCMP. We're going to talk about foreign interference. That's going to be a great show. And then on Thursday, we have the U.S. Ambassador, Pete Hoekstra. And then on Friday, we have Jasmine Lane. And then on Monday, we already have Martin Peltier, economist, lined up. So working hard. And we got a budget of, compared to the CBC, minuscule. But think about that X and Blue Sky thing. They'll tell you that, they need to cancel X because it's garbage and everybody goes to Blue Sky. Nobody went to Blue Sky. Or the people of influence there, it's like 3% of what X is. So they don't have as much influence let's just say they exaggerate their influence, and some people are being sucked in by that exaggeration of their influence. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? They exaggerate their influence. They talk a good game, but they're full of shit, and actually they're full of your tax dollars as well. So cheers.